Hi, and welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two people decide to record a podcast during a thunderstorm and really roll them dice on whether or not there's going to be a power outage. I'm Theresa.
I'm Angie. It's my thunderstorm.
So I do have grievous apologies to listeners, particularly those who may have listened to last episode, episode 60, and then decide to tune in this week and they have questions. Um, I
Concerns, if you will.
Yeah, geography questions. This is a history podcast, and boy, um, Mexico didn't own Canada. Mexico didn't own Canada. My notes said Mexican owned California, and yet multiple times in rapid succession, I said Mexican owned Canada, like I can't read, and then I said it again, and then I said it again. And only one of the times I meant to say Mexican owned California, it actually came out, but that was the last one, after I'd blown all my credibility. So if this is your first
Here she
episode,
is getting her
welcome.
credibility back.
Yeah, if this is what you can expect from us, and you've been warned.
And listen, I didn't question anything because she had her years right. I assumed we were winning.
I know normally I misspeak and put us in the wrong century.
And
And
normally I say words like apocryphal.
beautiful word. I will not let you live that down, particularly since I had to
Don't
go
sit
through a
on it.
ton of hoops to figure out how I would spell apocryphal.
I thought you did a wonderful job. I knew I wasn't going to live it down, and I knew eventually I was going to see it spelled out. And when it hit me today, I was like, that was beautiful.
Apocryphal.
How many times did your autocorrect try to correct it?
I think after around the sixth time, it went, all right, we'll circle back on this one.
I see we're gonna win this one today.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna go back to fighting the duck war.
It's my favorite. Oh, ducking ducks.
Ducking ducks. But yeah,
Excited.
so that's our life. I think
I
I go first.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think you go first. I think I went first last time.
Yeah. So I am going to tell a forgotten tale, because there were certain episodes that got lost. Um, I'm going to tell you the story of Aline Griffin. Do you remember her?
I remember the name and I remember I loved the story.
Okay. My sources are The Princess Spy. It's a book by Larry Loftus. And there's a New York Times article, Model Countess Author Spy Aline Griffin is dead.
Oh, devastating.
So we're going to start the story in May 23, 1923. Mary Aline Griffith is born in Rockland County. It's a hamlet of Pearl River, New York. Her father, honestly, like if you were to meet him in today's world, you would view him as a hustler, right? He manufactures printing presses at a plant that's owned by her grandfather. This dude also sells real estate and insurance. So he's really diversifying his income streams, which, I mean, we all should. Her mother, she is said to have descended from the Pilgrims,
Okay.
which is a pretty neat, like, kind of, line. Like, that's a really fun fact. Now, when she's of age, right about the age you would be, she goes to college, which when you think about it, this being in like what, the early 40s, like I was really impressed by. And
Yeah.
she goes to a Catholic college, College of Mount St. Vincent in the Bronx, and she gets a degree in history, literature, and journalism. And then afterwards, she gets hired as a model in Manhattan by a Vienna-born fashion entrepreneur named Hattie Carnegie. So she's, by the way, she's gorgeous. Aileen Griffith is just stunning. And World War II breaks out, and then her brothers get drafted, and she really marvels at them leaving and getting to go serve their country. She really wants to help out and ends up getting turned away.
As you do.
Yep. Now,
when you have a uterus
those things, those pesky things, they just,
and your boobs are just floating around, causing
yeah,
problems.
really. She ends up going on a date, and this date changes her life, which is not a phrase I think I say often, nor should I feel like it should change her life that often. Um, but she goes out on this double date with a dude named Frank Ryan. Frank ends up
That
being,
sounds such an American soldier name. I just need to say that.
but it's also a dude with two first names, right? I don't know how you feel about that.
I have three in my house.
Oh, that's right, Craig. Hmm. All right, so
So
before I
there's
talk
that.
smack about that, I'll just keep going, shall I? So Frank Ryan is an agent for the government's Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, the forerunner to the CIA.
I
So
love
just
them.
hold that in your noodle noggin. It's not like he necessarily, tips his hand, but you get that in the foreshadowing. Now, because she's just jaw-droppingly gorgeous, he asks if she's planning to become a famous model, and she snaps, "Not if I can help it. I want to get into the war overseas." You're just like,
Like, I got stuff to do.
get it. Like she's not going to deal with his sass and him cutting her down to really just her looks. So he stares at her a moment and then he begins to like pepper her with questions. Is she married? No, she's on a date. Did she speak any foreign languages? Yes, Spanish and French.
That's
And
awesome.
then after the date, Frank reaches out to her. Now, this is like the total spy story setup. She's directed to meet this man in a lobby, and the man is going to have a white carnation in his lapel. And she's told, don't mention this meeting to anybody. Like all of this is where we get like the full-on movie scripts from. She's at this meeting, she's told to pack a bag, bring clothes with no labels, like literally cut the labels out of your clothing.
Okay.
She ends up getting recruited and going through training at the farm. And in the book, they mention how all the beds are bugged to see if any of the recruits talked in their sleep.
Don't talk in your sleep. No one in my house would pass that.
Well, this is something you should bring up at the table in case you need to undermine any of their future plans because
They
apparently
know.
the OSS, they're like they won't get anybody who's going to, give away secrets, which is fantastic. And I'm really appreciative of that. Now, she's trained in lockpicking, cryptography, and small arms. And then in one class, she's taught how to turn a newspaper into a stiletto. Not the shoe, the knife blade.
The knife.
The knife blade.
I'm Parts are coming back. I was so
You're,
excited when you
yep.
said newspaper. I was like, "Oh!"
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, listen.
I mean, look, I'm super thrilled anytime we get into any World War II era class that women are taught how to spy. Like, I am here for that.
Agreed.
Hmm. And then after leaving the farm, she gets herself hired as a code clerk deciphering messages for the United States Embassy in Madrid. And it's here she she poses as a socialite that's employed by the American oil companies.
Okay.
Now, when the
How do I
book,
get that job?
I mean, I think we have to start very differently, right? I think step one, be jaw-droppingly
Oh,
gorgeous, be employed as a model,
it's to
have
be
multiple
employed as
languages.
model part.
Yeah, like I'm not up
We
to
are
snuff there.
both gorgeous. I'm just
I
saying.
like potatoes too much to be a model.
I also like snack more than I like Tic Tacs.
Hmm. The cigarettes and champagne diet just doesn't do it for me.
Really isn't. I love tri-tip.
Oh, girl.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, she's doing through this. The book talks about when she goes to like Spain for the first time, like when she like fully kind of arrives, she ends up drawing the attention of the nation's leading bullfighter. And this dude like fills her apartment with roses and flowers and the whole nine. His entourage arrive and they really like insist that she takes his matador cape. Like this, like they are trying to insist on all the honors. And she's like, absolutely. Like, who are you?
Excuse
Like,
me?
who? The leading bullfighter. Who?
Okay.
Like, good for him, I suppose. Like, and so she's not basically not into him, at least not at the first, like, she's not into him. But anyhow, he keeps popping back up. But she is into leading the high life, right? And so one of the things that she talks about is she mentions getting an apartment and having enough of her salary left over to buy Balenciaga dresses.
Ugh.
So she's not slumming it. She's doing okay. And I mean, I didn't write down how much rent was, but when I originally read through the whole book, it was nothing. Nothing.
Well, enough that Balenciaga is your go-to.
Right. When you can fill your
Yeah.
wardrobe with the highest of ends of labels and have enough to not live on the street.
You know, you know who I think would absolutely have loved her, or she would have loved them?
Who?
Your boys from the Bronx.
Oh, the low life crew? Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, they would have been like, look at you,
I tip my
girl.
hat to you, madam.
Right. Um, now her cover, it's a good thing she loves Balenciaga dresses because her cover is being a socialite. So she's dressing the part. She's dining at German-owned restaurants. And this is where I gotta admit that I didn't put two and 10 together to realize that Spain was a hotbed of espionage during the war.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah.
Like neutral-ish country. The Nazi Germany regime is courting Franco, the head of, the Spanish government, and they're kind of going back and forth. Now, as all of this is going on, she's a woman in a mostly male-dominated world of espionage, and so she sees her femininity as a strength. And she said that, for example, women are better than men at extracting classified information from other men.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
It's not hard.
I mean, and like we've said this before. Last episode, Margaret Skinner, episode 53, Phyllis Latour, episode 46 with Colin Gubbins when he was inspired by Margaret Skinner so that he started recruiting female spies. And then we have episode 21, Nancy Wake. Like, so
I'm just seeing a trend.
we just can't not say this because we are underrated. These are things.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Now, at one point, she's in Malaga and she is passed a list of safe houses and supposed to get them to another spy. And as she's going through like to get this list to the other spy, she runs into some snacks. She's briefly
Oh
jailed.
no.
So she gets on a train, right? So the whole story, she gets on a train. She's not because she has to deliver these papers so quickly, this list of safe houses, she's not able to get the right traveling papers. And she's just like, fingers crossed that they don't stop me and ask me for my papers. And as they're getting into town, the conductor's like, and your papers? And she goes, what? I'm too cute for what? What'd you
Sorry,
say?
what?
Is there a Starbucks here? And
Oh, that
she's
is 100% what I would have asked.
yep. Um, so she's arrested for traveling without the right paperwork, and um, she's held
Ugh,
overnight, and she's
ugh.
watching the hours tick by on when she's supposed to like, well, if you miss the first drop time, then here's the next time, and if you miss this third one, the dude you're supposed to meet is just going to disappear into the ether, and you'll never see him again, and that
Right.
list of safe houses is for naught. So she's
Is Dunsky,
panicking. And she's
as
also
one
trying,
would.
right. And like, so she's in this open jail and she's like trying to like play it cool while she's panicking, right? She narrowly gets out in time. And it was something that really kind of messes with her. And so she makes it out, she gets the drop, that she starts to head home. Now, when she gets back to Madrid, there's kind of a problem. She's let two Spanish agents stay at her place. They're on the run. Um, and she returns home late one night, and one of the women who was asleep in her bed has been murdered. Like
Oh, that's not
gunshot.
comforting.
No. This woman, the dead woman, she had offed two German soldiers to get into Spain. And Eileen
Oh, I see.
never learns if the bullet was meant for Eileen or for the woman who shot the German soldiers, because Eileen is a spy.
I would not be sleeping for a while.
Yeah,
Like you would find me
yeah,
curled up in the closet.
yep, yeah, under my Balenciaga dresses.
Yep, with
Hmm.
my Louboutins in front of me.
Yeah,
Yep.
yep. So that happens. That's uncomfortable. But she's also a socialite. So none of this happens in a vacuum. It's not she's just a spy. She's dating five men as all of this is happening and trying to maintain that
Please tell me they
appearance.
all have the same name.
No, no, they don't.
Of course not.
So she's holding up this charade. And then, as all of this is going on, she realizes that she's being followed home every night.
Can I guess? Can I guess? Can I please guess?
But guess.
Please tell me it's the love-struck matador and he is sending her with protection. Am I right?
So hold that thought, because she's paranoid, right? Like
Yeah.
she's, like she is actively spying. She is actively passing messages. She has been taught in the farm to, like, hey, you're
Do
going to
the
be
thing.
tailed, shake your tail, not like a
That I'm
Polaroid.
sure is not what they said.
Like, like lose your tail, not,
I
shake it like a
gotcha.
Polaroid picture. Now,
Or do,
I
whatever.
mean, if it works. She talks about like all the things she does to like try to shake up, try to lose these people who are following her, like trying to get her landlord to like help her, like, be protection, be a second set of eyes on her. And as all of this is going on, one of her the matador that you brought up, Juanito, he ends up getting gored, and it's a pretty bad event. And so she goes to the hospital, she meets the dude's mom, and while she's like making sure he's okay, because he's a friend. Like, yes, he kind of has big feels for her, and she's kind of like, friend zoned him.
She still cares about him.
Right. Like, you get gored by a bull, I'll stop by your ICU.
Seems fair.
Right. Like you've got to
Yeah.
invest heavily to get me to come, but if you make that investment, I will show up. Now, while
Because
she's
the
in,
apartment full of roses was not enough.
I mean, that was a bit overkill, right? That was
Listen,
trying too
I'm
hard. It
only
was love
asking for a
bombing.
little bit of violence. Okay, just get gorged.
Would you? Would you just catch a horn?
I mean,
Catch a bull by
that's
the
all I'm
horns
asking.
in the stomach. Um,
Literally, not figuratively.
but dude, she's in like in the hallway of the hospital, and she recognizes one of the dudes that's been following her.
Okay.
And she's just like, I'm sorry. What? Because then she's thinking like, I'm being tailed even here. And that's when she realizes that you were right. It's one of Juanita's men that's been tailing her because he wants to make sure she's safe. So he's like hiring his boys out to keep an eye on her.
That is such a movie. Like, I'm sorry, where is this woman's movie?
You think we would have 10 of them, right?
By now, yeah. I'm upset because that is such a baller movie move to
Right.
send your boys out.
I mean, and there's so many more movie-esque moments of this where you're just like, what? What?
Again, why isn't this on Amazon Prime yet?
I know. Um, so honestly, like I really, when I think about Juanito doing this, it's great that he did it. I think it'd be better if he'd have told her, like,
I
hey, by
mean,
the way, I just date who you will, because he knew she's dating all these other people. But I'm just gonna make sure that
you get home safe every night.
I want Carlos to, make sure you get home. He doesn't need to walk with you, but he's just gonna keep some eyes out.
Yeah, that seems legit.
Right. Like I wouldn't be, I'd be a little annoyed, but I'd be okay with it. Now, she says in an article in the Boston Globe in 1990 that it published in 1997, she says, I've been jailed in Malaga, kidnapped in Madrid, and attacked in Switzerland, which is one of the
Oh,
most incredible lines that somebody can say about their lives. She wrote about being abducted when she was leaving a dinner at the Madrid Country Club. And she was dining with high-ranking Nazis in 1944 when this happened. And it's there that she shoots one of her kidnappers who turned out to be a double agent. And she's uncertain of whether or not that she actually killed the man.
oh gosh, she did not double tap.
She said, quote, naturally, I didn't wait to take his pulse. Naturally. Naturally.
Of course.
She's wearing a Balenciaga. She's not going to get blood on her dress. That may not come out.
I mean, I mean.
Naturally. I'm not going to take his pulse. Who am I?
I think that needs to be the cover. That needs to be what the movie's called. I can
Naturally.
take his pulse. Heavens,
So,
what do you expect of me? I'm not taking my gloves off for this.
right. Like they go all the way to the elbow. Do you see these things, darling? So World War II ends, and her office is starting to get reports that the office is going to close. And
Okay.
President Truman, he doesn't want to deal with the OSS. He's like, this is ridiculous. Both him and the British government, they're not necessarily fans of ungentlemanly warfare. And so they are like, wrap it up,
Oh.
wrap it up.
We're done. Pulling the plug.
Yep. And so Eileen's super bummed because this is kind of what she loves. She's been tracking Nazis that are leaving Europe through Spain as the scatter and largely going to Latin America. And she's keeping track of these rat lines. And she's also tracking the art that the Germans have stolen.
Oh, what a badass.
And so she's doing all of this. She's like, I can't leave. I'm busy.
I got stuff in my schedule.
Right. Like this has been planned with the big
Can we
crazy
call the
eyes.
war off in a little bit?
Yeah. Like tell Truman to simmer down and wait a quarter. Now, despite being bummed, Eileen thinks that this is a brilliant time to take vacation. And as she's doing this, she really wants one of her boyfriends to propose. She's got eyes on a specific one. And it's that one boyfriend she's got decent feelings for. Now, she's been going on grand dates with this dude who ends up being a count. He ends up being, so he's got the noble blood, right? She's hanging out with the Spanish royal family. She's also getting recruited by Frank Ryan. Remember him? The blind date at the beginning of the
Oh, old
story?
Frank Ryan. Uh-huh.
Well, Frank is forming the CIA, and wouldn't you know it, they're setting up offices in Paris and other sites around Europe, and they could use somebody like her.
Well, good thing she is not bummed about the war ending.
And so she's like, I mean, I love the work, but there's this dude, Luis. And he's her fifth suitor. He's a handsome count. He's won her heart. He's hinted at marriage. He's hinted.
Oh, heavens. The hinting.
Yeah. And so she's really trying to be like, should I stay
Can
or
we
should
wait a
I go
minute?
now?
Yeah.
And so the OSS is winding down. Her boss gives Griffith the choice to quit now or wait while they assemble the CIA. They even have her next assignment selected in Switzerland, which isn't Spain.
This is a problem,
This is a
I think,
problem.
for Luis.
And so she gives Luis a choice. She's like, marry me or I'm taking this job. Now, he doesn't quite know what the job is. And when he kind of hems and haws, she replies with, quote, I work for a living.
For my Balenciaga dresses.
Because he's a playboy, right? I mean, not necessarily a playboy, but he's a count, right? He doesn't,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
He's in the family business.
work comes differently to him.
Yeah.
Now, her ultimatum is basically announce that we're engaged or I'm off to Zurich.
Okay.
And he proposes. And then she finally tells him what she does for a living. because
Oh,
it's not for the
I guess
American
this
oil companies.
seems fair that she should let him know something.
Right. He doesn't believe her.
Well, of course.
And so, they just go on about it. She's like, "Great, you don't believe me? Fine. I told you once. I'm not going to repeat myself." And so they go on about their business. And then it's a decade after the war that Griffith receives a call from Washington. Now, given her social status, she's a countess, her global travels, she's an elegant mother of three. They want to know, are you good with freelancing? Maybe doing the occasional job, you know,
I
for a
have
friend.
an idea for a friend. A friend of mine
Yeah,
wondered, are you still
your
in the industry?
your name came up in a meeting, and we thought couldn't hurt to ask.
We'll check her LinkedIn.
Yeah. So she tells the CIA yes. She tells Luis nothing.
Once a spy, always a spy, I suppose.
And then when her husband died in 1986, she started writing her memoirs. Now, both the author, Larry Loftus, who read the book that I'm obsessed with, that this was basically a glorified book report, and then a dude named Rupert Allison, who is the British intelligence expert, they both believe that her memoirs are heavily embellished, but who's to say? Her friend list included Audrey Hepburn, Jackie Kennedy, Wallace Simpson.
She was not in the lower echelon of society, that's for
No,
sure.
no. She died in 2017 at the age of 94.
That gave me chills knowing that she was alive at the same time as us.
Yeah. And that is a photo
Do you
of
have,
her that appeared in Vanity Fair.
let me drop this real quick. There we go. Oh my gosh. Could she be any more glamorous? I would love to describe to our dear listener what she looks like, but I'm kind of enthralled right now.
I mean, honestly,
She
she looks like
oh
Audrey Hepburn's older sister if Holly Golightly in the Breakfast at Tiffany's had an older sister. Like
yeah,
she's
she
just
does. She has
glamorous.
yeah. If you pictured glamour like the big, what do you call that, bouffant hair,
Yep.
like it's sleek, it's shiny. She's wearing pearls, pearl drop
Pearls
earrings.
the pearl drop earrings, those pearls are the size of quarters. Like those are
They're
not
massive.
small, right? And
And
then
the necklace she has on has at least 4 rows,
oh yeah, like it's
at
a
least.
four-strand pearl necklace. And
I'm
she's
going to assume the front has diamonds, like of that necklace.
I'm gonna
It
assume
looks
the
like the type that
dress
would
has
clasp.
diamonds sewn into it. Like let's be honest, like that gown
Yeah,
probably glitters.
I would have to agree with you.
And
Yeah,
there's a dude in the
it's stunning.
foreground. You see his hand. He's holding a candelabra. There's a dude in the background with another candelabra. And she's just looking over her shoulder, like, who, me, the Countess?
She's just planned a party. We're at my daughter's nuptials.
Right.
That's what this looks like, an engagement party. Yeah.
But
An
just,
engagement party for royalty. Let me just.
yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, she was hanging out with like the Spanish princesses, right? Like she
Yeah.
was not, her guest list anywhere was not like a slouch. She wasn't slumming it with some Pabst.
I want to know how you get yourself inserted into that as a spy. Like, how do you just get invited to these dinners? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I prefer potatoes, and I think I'd have to leave my house occasionally. So I feel like those are two
Oh,
very strong counts against me. But if you are a potato eating princess who also loves staying at my house, let me know. We could hang. And I did say my
I like
house
potatoes.
because I don't know if I want to go to
Yeah.
yours.
I like your house. I mean, it's a commute, but
I mean, it is. I just don't know if I'd want to hang out in a castle or a palace or a massive or a massive manse. Like I just no, I'm okay. Like small, quaint, like
I could hang out in a castle. I think you should.
you're gonna
That would
just
be
float
fair to
that out
say.
there. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Just telling the universe, if there's a castle, preferably one with a ginormous library and a wall of windows and a roaring fire, I would take that. Thank you.
okay, fair.
Yeah. And a cook. Although I love to cook, so I just really want to cook to bring me snacks. So I need a valet. That's what I need. Right? Like that seems to
Yeah,
check.
I'm down for that.
Yeah, that works.
But that's the story
I
of
will
Eileen
tell
Griffith.
you, I'm slightly jealous that we never got a chance to talk to her.
Right?
Yeah, man.
Because I bet she'd have
I
been
don't know
cool
what.
as hell. I mean,
Oh,
aside from the
yeah.
fact that she didn't get her hands dirty to the point where she wouldn't check to see if she killed a man.
I do feel like a double tap would have done the job.
I mean,
Do we ever find out if he lived or not?
we don't. We have no idea.
Oh God, she
Like,
lived with that over her shoulder for the rest of her life.
I don't think she cared.
I'm okay, that's fair. I mean, once you become the countess, you probably have security anyway.
Right.
Probably not something she has to worry about
No,
much. Or he
especially
died.
now.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's fair.
I mean, she made it to 90 something, right? Like she won.
She did. She abs 90 something in those gorgeous gowns. Yes, she won. She
Hmm.
absolutely did. Hmm. Could not agree with you more. Yeah. So, I'm going to start my story by telling you that the other day after our last story, I said to the man that I was slightly jealous. That might not be the word. Impressed is probably a better word. That you always have these amazing stories that reference areas you're familiar with
Yeah.
or from your own region. And I said to him, it's a shame that I cannot find a single women's history story that took place in our neck of the woods, which is not entirely true because there are plenty, but I just couldn't find any where they were just so intriguing. Like there's lots and lots of intriguing stories, but I felt like the ones that I really wanted to tell involved a lot of women and mostly nameless ones. So it,
Mm,
it seemed, like there wouldn't be a ton of information to offer
right.
in reference to that. Um, so obviously I don't know if I've ever said this, but I live in Gold Country, so we are the final Western frontier, right? Like we are the cowboy capital of the world where we live. And so I'm having this conversation with my husband, and within, I want to say 15 minutes, he was like, I got you, babe. And he found me quite possibly the most entertaining lady for the month of March that I've had so far.
Whoa.
And he is winning. Yeah. Yeah. So my sources are Cowgirl Magazine, Wild Women of the West, Eleanor Dumont, legendsofamerica.com. Again, I believe I sourced them during the story for Bass Reeves.
Bass
And
Reeves?
yeah, did I say bass?
You did.
I felt like I said that wrong. Bass Reeves
It's all
and
right.
KQED
Mexican
dot
owned
org.
California. Let me just say it correctly.
Or hypocrisy. Hypocrisy.
Apocryphal?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
can't say that either. I can't say it right. I can't say it wrong. What is my problem? And my final source is KQED dot org, the pistol packing gold rush gambler who beat men at their own game.
I'm here for this.
I knew you would be. So I just want to say, I want to say this delightful little fact right now about her. Eleanor Dumont, later and better known as Madame Mustache, was one of
Oh,
the first known professional blackjack players in American history.
so this is another mustache.
Yeah, I'm just telling you,
Another,
I am
yeah,
obsessed with facial hair. Yeah. Another little factoid before I get into it, because it is worth mentioning at the beginning. She spends well over 30 years famous in the American West for her skills at the blackjack table.
girl.
Well over 30 years. Like that to me was absolutely wild. She was thought to have been born in New Orleans, Louisiana, right about 1829. There are sources that say perhaps she was born in Europe. Another still that claims she was a viscountess and escaped her terrible husband by coming to America. But whatever and however the reason is, she made her way west to the California Gold Rush and begins working at the Bell Union in San Francisco.
Okay.
So it's worth noting that before she takes on the name Eleanor Dumont, it's believed that her original name was Simone Jules.
Oh, I love
She
that.
is, I know,
Why
isn't
would
that
you
gorgeous?
change that?
I don't know, I thought the same thing. Um, she's a petite and pretty little French woman. She's in her early 20s when she arrives in San Francisco. So this is right about 1849. Like I said, she gets a job working at the Bell Union and she establishes herself as a gambler. Here she favors the game of 21, which is 21. It directly translates from the French as 21. It is also interesting to note that she was the only woman to deal cards at the Bella Union Hotel, and women wouldn't be allowed to deal on the Vegas Strip until 1971.
That's a bit
So,
late. We already had the
a
vote
little
by
bit.
then.
Yeah, I thought that was astronomically wild. Like, I am sorry. What? I would have never thought that to be a thing, especially in Vegas. I just feel like
Could
that
you
would be
imagine
more progressive.
suffragettes outside of Vegas saying we've had the vote for 50 years and we still can't deal jet blackjack?
It- that pretty much. Yeah, I mean that's just silly, right? So 21, it's basically the precursor for what we to know today as the beloved American blackjack. And it is her game. While working at the Bell Union in legendsofamerica.com, the source that I used for most of this, which I was so impressed with, says, quote, she was known for her elegant dignity, aloof manner, and the ability to handle stress on the card table, as if she couldn't. Are you serious? But we can't deal cards in
She
Vegas for
she's a woman and she ain't hysterical. It's impressive.
pretty much, yeah. She, however, gets let go of her job there because of a suspicion of her being a card shark.
You
Um,
know, I don't see a lie here.
well, you might later. So here's the thing. After her time there in San Francisco, she shows up in Nevada City, California. So picture it. She's stepping off the stagecoach. It's 1854. She's stylish. She is decked out, and she creates a stir amongst the rough and tumble residents of this mining camp, right? Because we are in gold rush era California. We don't even have like outside of San Francisco, we don't have full-fledged cities like we do fit 20 years from now, 30 years
Right.
from now, right?
Right.
So she's like walking through the mud, right? This is the point with which she registers as her name as Eleanor Dumont, and she takes a room at the Phepps Hotel while two of the younger miners who are clearly just absolutely enamored with her quickly volunteer to carry her bags in. I just think that's so cute. For the next few days, she's seen walking up and down Broad Street, which is the main street of Nevada City. She's peering into the windows of shops that have gone out of business and generally just looking bizarre. This is, of course, curious. But soon after, the whole town is like they're talking, they're trying to figure out why this lovely young lady and all of her finery seems to have nothing better to do than walk up and down the street and look in empty businesses. Like, what are you doing,
Because there's
madam?
no Netflix at the time and the city is exactly one street big.
That was exactly what I thought. Like, well, she doesn't really have the access to entertainment that the rest of us have.
Right.
However, their questions would be answered in short order. Once the editor of the Nevada Journal ran her advertisement showing the opening of, quote, the best gambling emporium in all of Northern California. So basically, the whole town receives invitations to this grand opening. And at the time, 21 on Broad Street, they are enjoying a game with Madame Dumont free of charge. And excuse me, not free of charge. I cannot believe I just said that.
Mexican
With free
Canada.
champagne. They're enjoying a game with Madame Dumont and all the free champagne they want.
So this
Her
is very
den,
much like Vegas.
yes. In
Okay.
my opinion, this is the start of Vegas, right? Except for it's in Nevada City, California. Her den is finely furnished and even goes so far as to have gas chandeliers.
Whoa.
I know, right? Her establishment had rules and would only allow well-behaved and well-groomed men, and cursing was discouraged in her presence. Get it, girl?
Wow.
Right?
Now,
So,
Mary Field would not have been involved. Like she was smoking, she probably swore. Mary Fields is not invited.
well, no women were invited at the time except Madame Dumont. So there's that. Excuse me. So, like I said, the men have to be well behaved and they have to be well groomed, and they would clean up and put on the best clothes they had to pile through the doors. And they absolutely adored Miss Eleanor. They thought she was witty, vivacious, charming. Sister knew how to work the room, and she would spend time talking to them before she even began the game. So, like, I'm just imagining this absolutely gorgeous socialite going from one table to the next, welcoming everybody into her establishment, making sure they're wined and dined and they're happy, and then she deals the cards. And the men just love her. She is a novelty that they cannot get enough of.
Because I'm assuming mining town, not a lot of women,
Yeah.
and the
Not
ones
a
that are
lot, no.
there, not necessarily the ones you write home about.
Right, right. Or at least you're not definitely not telling mom about the ones you've seen at the mining town, right?
Right. Yeah.
She's known to have rolled her own cigarettes while she was drinking champagne, and she made it clear from the get that she was definitely a lady. There was no
Impropriety.
foolish business happening, impropriety happening in her establishment or with her for that matter.
Keep them hands to yourself. I'll keep the
In
champagne
fact,
going, but you keep them hands to yourself.
in fact, what's interesting also is that very few knew the game of 21, so it is safe to say that she brought it to the area. Like, she was number one at this. Faro was the favored gambling endeavor at the time, and the novelty of having a pretty female dealer quickly attracted more and more players. The Legends of America website has a great quote about her time as the dealer saying, dealing like the seasoned pro that she was, the miners more often lost than they won. However, they seldom complained, thinking it a privilege to be in her presence. When she won, she would sweetly express regret and treat the losers to free champagne. When she lost, she seemed pleased for their good fortune. And all I gotta say is, sister knows what she's doing and she is killing it.
Oh yeah, no, she's
Like,
counting cards. She knows exactly what's
oh,
happening.
I adore like the images of I have of what she's got going on. So during this time, she was not known to have taken any lovers. She kept her personal life very private. And as I said before, women were prohibited from coming into her establishment. They weren't even allowed to like be outside. Like, kick rocks,
Oh.
honey. I am the only one. Which I was like, hey, good on you. She soon builds up enough finance that she can open a larger establishment. And she takes on a partner named David Tobin, and he is a professional gambler from New York. And at this point, they open what's called Dumont's Palace, which also provides games of faro and chuck-a-luck. She hires more dealers and a small band of violinists to entertain the to entertain the gamblers. The palace was successful, keeping dozens of games going day and night. Can you imagine the amount of
Wow.
money going through there, right? But for Nevada City, like so many other mining camps, the gold rush would finally play out. And then our girl Eleanor would make her way to little old Columbia, California in 1857, where she set
Here
up
we
her
go.
table in a hotel, right? So I love, like, dear listener, Columbia, California is 3.5 miles away from where I am sitting today. My children have grown up playing in those streets, drinking the sarsaparilla, living the gold country life. So it was so fun for me to know that she was a part of that legacy and a part of that history. And I would have never thought before learning about her that we had lady blackjack dealers.
Now let's
Like,
stop and like really double down, right? Because I don't think anybody outside of a handful of listeners really know what Columbia is, right? It is
that's
a
true. Yeah.
recreation of a gold rush town. And you can walk through the main street. There is a candy shop where you get old-timey
Oh,
candy. There is a
mm-hmm.
stagecoach that you can ride that takes you on this thing. Now, it is hokey in the sense that the stagecoach is held up every single route, and you get
Yes,
to
it
see
is.
bandits, and you
Yes, you
can
do.
pan for gold. And
Yes, you
like it
can.
is the highlight of like fourth grade when you are
Oh
in
my
that
gosh, yeah.
area and you get to do the
Yeah.
field trip. Like that is
It
what
is.
you
And
want.
because there's a couple of other really cool things about Columbia. So specifically, most of the buildings on their main street are the original buildings. Yes, there have been fires and there have been rebuilds, but there are houses still from 1849 and there are hotels still standing from 1849, which is awesome. But in fourth grade, if you happen to live in this county, you get to go to what is called Tent Town. And that is when the docents of the area recreate what it was like to be a miner in the gold rush. You lived in the tents, the establishments were in the tents, and you panned for gold near the tents. And
Oh,
every fourth
wow.
grader in the county gets to go. It's so much fun.
I was
And
not
we're
in the
all
county.
nerds. We're all nerds. We cannot help it. And you can get sarsaparilla and giant pickles at your local saloon. That's my favorite part. So what I find really interesting about her is she clearly understood business, right? Like the gold in Nevada City runs dry, so she follows the miners to Columbia. When Columbia starts to dwindle, she picks up that table and just like she did with the Nevada City, she follows the miners to wherever they're going next. So she spends the next decade, roughly the 1860s, in Virginia City, in, excuse me, Pioche, Nevada, Fort Benton, and Bannack, Montana, Helena, Salmon, Idaho, Colorado City in Arizona, and Corinne and Silver City in Utah. So she is getting around. Like she is seeing more of the West than most people today ever see,
Mm,
in my opinion. However, though that lifestyle kind of wears on her, so she gives it another couple years when she finally decides she's going to buy a ranch and settle down, despite the fact that she doesn't know the first thing about animals. And when I learned that, I laughed so hard because it felt so modern. Like, oh, I
mm.
want chickens. And now I have llamas. And also my backyard is zero point 0.5 acres.
Yeah.
Like,
I've got COVID bangs and some chickens.
that's exactly what this was giving me. So she buys this ranch in what is now Carson City, Nevada, and enter Jack McKnight. And I'm just going to ask you right now, what are your thoughts? What do you think Jack McKnight's going to be like?
Oh man, he sounds like a ruffian. He's gonna love bomb you. He's going to be a ne'er-do-well, but he's gonna be just a lovable rogue.
I thought that
I
too.
him
He's handsome, he's well dressed. He is the best kind of smooth talker you could ever ask for. And he says he's a cattleman. And for the first time in her life, Miss Eleanor falls head over heels in love.
Did you ever see Yellowstone?
I haven't watched it yet. It's on my list.
Okay, then I'm saying
Yeah.
nothing. But okay, I take that
Thank
back.
you.
When you see it,
I'm saying everything.
I'm imagine that he looks like Rip. R.I.P. Rip.
Rip. Okay.
Rip.
All
Like
right.
actually
I
let me pull up that thing because this is Rip.
Okay, yeah, that's what I picture too.
Okay, great.
Um, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I picture too. However, much to our dismay, Mr. Jack McKnight is actually making his living conning others. It wasn't even a month before he disappears with her money, sells her ranch, and leaves her with all of the outstanding debts to handle on her own.
That's not like Rip.
That was devastating news for me to learn because I really had high hopes that this was going to be like this great Western love story and he was going to be the, the cowboy we all dream of, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what I wanted. Um, but he's not. And if it wasn't clear yet, she wasn't shy or timid and knew how to handle her business. There's a story that says she tracks him down and shoots him with a double barrel shotgun. She is suspected of the crime. She is never charged and denied responsibility. There's some that believe the judge thought McKnight had it coming, so he just let her off. I don't know how true that is, but I thought that was so funny and it actually super fits for the story of her life. Like, yeah, I could see the judge being like, you know what, I gamble in her parlor every night.
You know,
Mr.
she's pretty
McKnight,
cool.
you had it coming. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, bye.
Like if she did
Cool with
anything
it.
wrong, that's on you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I saw happening when I learned that.
You know, and like
Years later,
that goes back to
go ahead.
like my last story about Esther Short, right? When her husband goes to court for killing two British HBC, Hudson Bay Company peeps. And the judge is like, my only problem with you, Short, is that you didn't kill more of them. Like that
Yeah,
just has a very
yeah.
old West legal
Yes, it
judge kind of
does.
feel.
I am the judge, jury, and the executioner.
Yeah.
Years later, though, she did confess to killing him, which
I
I
mean,
was like,
after that
get it.
statute of limitations is over,
And really, in the American West, is there much of a statute of limitations?
I mean,
I mean, he stole our money, sold her house. He was not the nicest guy. So, regardless, she realizes she is all alone. She's broke. So she returns to the mining camps and starts gambling again. It's in 1861. She's in Pioche, Nevada. She sets up her table again. Now, keep in mind, she has this whole time, right? She has demand proper manners from these gentlemen, and she has since figured out how to work the rowdy crowd. She was said to use her powers of charm when she saw a crowd of drunk miners after a fight break out. Several of them pull their pistols, and they're like, we're gonna go for it. It's said that Madame Dumont quietly approached the noisiest of them and laughingly reproved from their ungallant conduct, succeeding in quieting the entire room. Teach me your
I
ways,
love
a
that.
wise one.
No, I mean, seriously.
Right?
And I
Like,
think
get it.
she's bringing such a different energy that she just disarms them.
I think that's exactly what it is. I think she fully understands exactly what mannerisms need to be for the moment. And it makes me so sad and so curious about what her life was like before she made it to California. Like, I wish we knew that information.
Do we?
So curious.
Do we? Because
I
it's
couldn't find
probably
it.
tragic. It's probably
I
like if she
suspect
grew
it's
up in France,
tragic.
it's tragic.
If she had to escape a vicious viscount, probably tragic.
I don't think she
If
escaped a
she grew
vicious
up in New
viscount.
Orleans, I think she was born and raised in New Orleans. And I think having to deal with the crowds and the type of people that came through New Orleans in that time, I'm sure that's probably where she learned it. Like I think that's the story that I'm going with, but I don't know
Right.
how accurate it is, right? Like that makes the most sense to me.
She was comfortable in
However,
chaos and knew how to manage it.
yes, she did. And that to me that speaks to New Orleans in this time. I mean, the pirates. I'm just Gonna
Right. You're not
put
wrong.
that
You're
out
not wrong.
there, right? Um, like I said before, when the gold runs dry, the miners leave, and the same could be said for this location as well. She would move several times again over the next 20 years. And in those additional 20 years, she's going from places like Bannock and Helena, Montana, and she is just earning her reputation, right? It's just growing and growing wherever she goes. And as tough as she was also noted for her heart. She often provided free meals and a place to stay for miners who needed it. And I just think that speaks to, again, like she was probably so disarming that they
Right.
were honest with her, you know?
Well, and imagine
While,
how helpful they are. It's like you can't double cross her. She gave me a place to stay and a meal last night. You raise your voice to her, I'm giving you my fist.
and I genuinely think that was the case for every person that came through her doors. Like, yes, you're not going to be able to please everybody. Yes, there's going to be some rivals. Yes, there's going to be this, there's going to be that. But I think the bulk of people that dealt with her just adored her. That seems to be the running case of the places that she goes and the things that she sees. So while at Fort Benton, Montana, she worked what was known as the bloodiest block in the West. Her place was on Front Street, and it was made up of more than a dozen saloons, dance halls, and brothels. Her table was in a gambling den called the Jungle, and I just need to know what that looked
Whoa.
like. I am dying to know what 1860s the Jungle looked like because I'm picturing disco, and I know that's not right.
No, you're not wrong. Like I'm imagining plastic palm trees, and that's not right.
Right? So, right, it's here. She's here at Fort Benton, Montana in 1867, and she's dealing her table. She spies an incoming boat called the Walter B. Dance. It's coming in a dock. However, she had heard a report the boat was carrying smallpox. She jumped
Oh,
up from her table, ran down the stairs, across the street to the levee, and she brandished two pistols, warning the captain not to stop. Like, you are not bringing that into my city. And I just love that for Fort Benton. Like, they had somebody watching their back that day. So from there, she again moves on. This time she goes to Salmon in Silver City, Idaho, Corinne, Utah, Eureka, and Virginia City, Nevada. And I mean, you can't make a tour of the West without speaking about Deadwood. So she's there too.
good
And it's
night.
here that some say she makes friends with Calamity Jane and she even tries to teach her how to play poker.
Oh my gosh.
Calamity Jane was a terrible gambler, so if she did try to teach her, she failed. And I absolutely love this and had to include it. In 1877, a reporter in Deadwood had this to say of her. Quote, "A character who attracts the attentions of all strangers is Madame Mustache, a plump little French lady, perhaps 40 years of age, but splendidly preserved. She derives her name, which is the only one she is known by, from a dainty strip of black hair upon her upper lip. She deals her own game and is quite popular with the boys who treat her with marked respect. She has bright black eyes and a musical voice, and there is something attractive about her as she looks up with a little smile and says, 'You will play, monsieur?' He continues by saying no one knows her history, but it's said she's to be very rich." Mm,
The fact that she is
I
hot enough to work a mustache.
Right? And so when I was like, every article I read, every source I find repeatedly talked about how when she was younger, she was gorgeous, just drop dead gorgeous. And then as she began to age, she kind of lost her figure. She's plump, right? And she develops this bit of a mustache. And that's when she develops the nickname, whether it came from a disgruntled customer or a minor that she somehow slighted, whatever the case may be, the nickname sticks. And for the most part, people didn't say it to her face because they respected her.
Right.
But it seems to me like she is very well aware that that's her name and it works for her. Like, listen, I know what's on my face. I'm not hiding it. I'm owning it. Y'all are still coming to my club. So I'm not going to worry about it. And she has the love of the people everywhere she goes. And I just could not get enough of it. And again, because I can't mention Deadwood and then not mention Tombstone,
I mean, when you said Faro, I was immediately all over that.
right? Well, she was also in Tombstone, Arizona, and this was when Tombstone's booming. She is still mustache and all, as charming and as ever, and she still has plans and success. At this point, she has established a brothel because you got to diversify your plans, you know?
Right, right.
And this rivals that of the popular blonde Mary's. Though it's smaller than her competitor, it is still very successful. Eleanor feels like she no longer has the power to draw in the big crowds to look at her, as she had been able to do years earlier. So she begins recruiting these beautiful young ladies to work in her house, quote unquote. She would dress them up in their best finery and then hire an expensive carriage and roll up and down the streets. Okay, let me just give you this image. They're in this exquisite carriage. Madame Dumont, if you will, is puffing on a large, long cigar and smiling and nodding at like royalty as she acknowledges the waves and the courtly bows of the gentlemen that come her way. I cannot get enough of this woman.
I mean, she knows her
And
audience.
I mean, she
That's
absolutely
that's the
does. Like,
equivalent of a 5-second ad that you can't skip on YouTube.
truly, she knows what's up. And it seems to be so, it seems that maybe she'd been working out the kinks of a brothel since about 1860 when she was in Bannock, Montana. But I think here is where it really works for her, right? Like she knows what's up. Now, like I said before, she feels like she's lost her looks, but she never loses her charm. Her body fills out. She becomes plump. She gets that bit of her mustache. It's a little bit darker, and she feels like at this point she can no longer control the miners with their bad manners and their tongues and their bad jokes, and they start acting like the ruffians that you would expect a miner to be. They
Right.
wouldn't remove their hats in her presence. But Eleanor didn't really seem to mind, and she no longer acted the lady that she did before. She, in fact, adopted some of the rougher characteristics of what it was like to be in mining life. In the beginning, she only drank wine or champagne, and only in moderation. By this time, whiskey becomes the drink of her choice.
Atta girl.
Right? But don't forget, right? She still has her fans and she is still beloved, and her name would continue to draw customers and gamblers to her establishment no matter where she went, no matter what she was doing, no matter how bad that mustache was that day, girlfriend plucked it or not. Like they were there. They
Okay.
do,
Hell yes. I am feeling better
right?
about my upper lip.
Right? Like she's killing it. Now, do keep in mind that about this time, her establishments kind of sort of start to dwindle to be more second rate, kind of more what you would expect out of a mining camp and less refined. Um, and also at this time, more and more women are arriving at the miners' camps. The cities are becoming cities,
Yeah.
villages, towns, families are starting to fill in, and so she's no longer considered a novelty like she was before.
Right.
But that doesn't stop her from being beloved everywhere she goes. She finally ends up in Bodie, California. Now, for those of
The
you
ghost
that,
town.
uh-huh, for those listeners that are not familiar with California, gold was found in Sutter Creek, and then immediately people they head west and they head north and they head and here we are. There is California is gold capital, right? Bodie is about 2 hours north of my home, and it is a favorite place for everyone to go that has any sort of love for history or ghost towns or photography for that matter. So it's so fun to learn that that's kind of where the end of her life, the remaining years of her life happen in Bodie. Her arrival is noted by a Bodie reporter, and I absolutely love this. Madame Mustache, whose real name is Eleanor, has settled for the time in Bodie, following her old advocation of dealing 21, faro, etc., as force of circumstances seem to demand. Probably no woman on the coast is better known. She appears as young as ever, and those who knew her ever so many years ago would instantly recognize her now. I'm just saying. Are you paying the reporters to say nice things?
I mean,
Because
you should. You should.
I, I mean, so unfortunately, about a year after she arrives in Bodie, her funds start to run real low, and one night she borrows $300 roughly from a friend to open her gambling table.
Wait, 300 today's money?
300 then's money. I didn't,
That's a
I'm
lot
so
of
sorry.
money.
Yeah, I didn't even think to look it up. I just saw $300 and was like, yeah, that's everyday money.
300 is 300.
Yeah,
Teresa's
that
not
was
going to
exactly
know.
where I knew you would know. But my mind didn't think to translate to today's money because in my brain it was 300. Of course it's 300.
Do you want me to look or are we good with rolling?
I mean, your choice. Do you need to know?
I need to know.
Okay.
80, 1960, what?
We are in 1879.
That's what I meant to say. $9,252.51.
Okay, well, that's
You,
more than $300.
so that time that you casually need to borrow 9,200 from your friend for reasons.
For reasons, right? And your friend knows the reasons, and your friend's like, "Well, okay, you'll make it back. You always do, right?"
Right.
But unfortunately, this time she did not. And after just a few hours, she loses it all. Without mentioning a word to anyone, she walks about a mile outside of town, drinks some red wine that happens to be laced with a lethal dose of morphine.
Mm.
Her body was found September 8th, 1879, by a sheep herder, along with a letter giving directions for her estate, the remainder of her items,
Yeah.
how they were to be disposed of, whatever, and a note that stated she was tired of life. And I'm dying to know what the rest of the letter said, or was it just simply, I'm done. I'm
Clocking
opting
out.
out. That was that was what I thought. Um, However, I have some great news reels from the day, I guess. Well, they're not reels, they're not videos, but the Bodie Morning News reported her death on September 9, saying, a suicide. Yesterday morning, a sheep herder, while in pursuit of his avocation, discovered the dead body of a woman lying about 100 yards from the Bridgeport Road, a mile from town. Her head rested on a stone, and the appearance of the body indicated the death was a result of natural causes. Coroner Justice Peterson was at once notified, and he was dispatched a wagon in charge of H. Ward of the Pioneer Furniture Store to that place, who brought the body to the undertaking rooms. Deceased was named Eleanor Dumont and was recognized as the woman who had been engaged in dealing a 21 game in the Magnolia Saloon.
Mm.
I love that. Her death evidently occurred from an overdose of morphine, an empty bottle having the peculiar smell of that drug being found beside the body. The history connected with the unfortunate suicide is but a repetition of that many others who have followed the life of a female gambler, with the exception perhaps that the subject of this item bore a character for virtue possessed by few in her line. To the good-hearted women of the town must we accord praise for their accustomed kindness in doing all in their power to prepare the unfortunate woman's body for burial.
Now, my only
I
complaint with that is, are we saying that women just can't gamble? Like we just don't have men with gambling problems that hit the same, like, mm, mm,
I think it's speaking to the hardness of a life like that. Like, I feel like from different projects that I've had to work on and different things, women that were working in the West often resorted to suicide for whatever their job happened to be. That just seemed like the easiest way to handle it. Whereas, men met other untimely demises, right? Like, I don't think it really
gunfights.
had so much to say that, right? I don't think it was so much specifically that she was a gambler, but that she was a woman working in the West. That's what I took from it.
Okay. I mean, there's still some blatant misogyny up in there, but I mean, I'll go
Oh,
with
well, of
it.
course. It is 1879. We can't vote yet. And as we all know, misogyny went away the moment we got the vote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Evaporated,
Yeah.
just disappeared into the ether.
Completely. Just
Yeah.
right off.
Never had to deal with that again.
Telegraph wires. Nope, never again.
No.
I think this part's really fascinating. Telegraph wires were soon carrying the story throughout the West,
Wow.
right? One stated, Bodie, California, the Free Press thus alludes to the death of a character well known. The inquest on the body of Eleanor Dumont took place this afternoon at 3 o'clock. The drug used by the unfortunate woman in taking her life was morphine. Dr. Rowe analyzed the contents of the bottle found by her side, and it proved to be a mixture of claret wine and the above narcotic. There
My
was
only
so much love.
complaint is that that would damage the taste of the alcohol. You're drinking a good
I
claret.
mean, maybe she put it in at the very end.
That last sip,
Yeah.
I just don't want that last sip in my mouth. I want the good stuff in my mouth. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Maybe she was
Getting,
chasing. I don't know.
oh,
I wasn't there.
fair. Carry on. Carry on.
I thought this was especially sweet, I guess. So there's a gambler, unnamed. He was a professional gambler, spent most of his life in and out of the mining camps in the West, had these remarks, and they were published, and it went across the nation. Poor Madame Mustache. Her life was a square game as was ever dealt. The world plays against her with all sorts of combinations, but she generally beat it. The turn was called on her at last for a few paltry hundreds. She missed the turn. None of the old boys were there to cover the bet for her, and she passed in her checks, game to the last. Poor Madame Mustache.
Mm.
Oh, my heart. Long story short, the locals raised enough money to provide her with a proper burial. And I thought this was just absolutely bananas. She's known for having a reputation for being honest in her dealings, always paying her debts. She was super proud of that. And basically like woe to anyone who said otherwise, right?
Right.
Hundreds of funerals happened in the mining camp, but Madame
Hundreds?
Mustache's was the
Oh no,
largest.
I thought she
Not just
had
for her,
hundreds.
but
Okay.
like no, just hundreds of people died, but hers had the largest funeral. The gamblers of the place buried her with all the honors, and carriages were brought from as far away as Carson City, which was a distance of 120 miles, specifically to be used in her funeral. I thought that was
Wow.
absolutely wild. Her body is known to be in the cemetery at Bodie, but no one really knows the location. And I was kind of bummed about
Wow.
that. Like we can't go pay our respects, but I mean, I guess we could go to the cemetery and just stand there. But that's the life of Eleanor Dumont or Simone Jules.
Now, I'm looking up pictures of Eleanor Dumont because you didn't necessarily lead with those. And
I did not
I'm
because I
assuming that like literally like these images, there's an image of her black and white, looking into the camera or looking into the distance. And then there's another version of her with a mustache, but the mustache looks photoshopped.
and that's why I didn't share any pictures because I thought the same thing. There are two really good photos of her and in one of them I've seen it with and without the mustache and it made me think that it's been exaggerated.
Yeah.
So
Like
I did not share any.
she had a German Hausfrau mustache. It was not the thick, luscious.
Yeah,
She wasn't rocking a Sam
it
Elliott.
wasn't Doc Holliday.
Right. Slander. Slander against Madame Mustache. And maybe she rocked that moniker, just be like, this clean upper lip. You mean I'm Madame Mustache?
Darling, I don't need to take my gloves off to find out if he's dead.
Yeah. I will not sully my
Can't be
hands to
bothered.
check his pulse.
Absolutely not.
Naturally.
Naturally. We had some wild and very different stories today.
We did. We did. But both
Yeah.
were elegant in their own right.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Madame Mustache would never be seen without her Balenciaga gown.
They just chose different areas to practice.
I mean, truly they did. And she wasn't into espionage, but
Because it wasn't open to her.
I mean that's true.
There was no
That's true.
active war. She was fighting the war of the sexes.
Truly. And she was winning.
So if
That's all I'm going to say.
you have loved this story, you are pro Madam Mustache, you are growing that stiff upper lip with its fuzzy, fuzzy nature. And you are thinking, you know what? I really need more of these women in my life. I need to follow these two women and hear about the craziness and shenanigans they bring. We're here for it. You know what? We're going to do this again next week.
Hmm.
Rate, review, subscribe, share us with your favorite mustached person. And on that note, goodbye.
Bye.